Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We have pretty much a full house. This is great. This is great. All right, we have everybody here. So, welcome everybody to the Long Island Energy presentation discussion group. Those of you who were upstairs a few minutes ago, you have explored the Long Island energy future. A lot of interesting points were brought out upstairs. Now we're going to talk a little bit more, changing gears a little bit to where are we right now with energy, and a little bit about how we got here and what's on the short-term horizon. Right? We talked a lot about the long-term future. Let's talk about where are we and where are we going next steps. We have a great panel for us today that hopefully you'll be able to ask some good questions and you'll learn a lot more. We'll all learn a lot more about what we deal with on a regular basis with the energy world than when we walked in this morning. So we have a very esteemed panel. We have Mike Deering from Long Island Power Authority. Mike is the Director of Customer Service Oversight and Strategy for Long Island Power Authority. We have Keith Rody, who's Director of Customer Management and Community and Government Relations, Downstate New York, right, for National Grid. They've got some fans with it, I guess, right? We have Mike Volz, who's the Director of Energy Efficiency and Renewables for PSEG Long Island. We got a lot of popular people here. And David Sheeran, who is CEO and co-founder of Empower Solar, one of the largest renewable companies on the island. So we're on a little bit of an accelerated schedule. I think some of the morning events have been running a little bit longer. So we're going to start right out. We're going to have each of the panelists take a few minutes to talk about what's important in their world, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some good discussion and conversation about where are we in the energy world, right? Nobody would argue how important energy is. It powers everything we do, right? Our economy, the work we do every day, our communications, our entertainment. So it is critical. A lot of issues and a lot of expertise up here on the panel, so let's get started. So I'd like to start with Mike Deering, who's going to talk about the Long Island Power Authority.
Thank you, John. This is a very excitable crowd here. Hopefully you're cheering as loud at the end as you are in the beginning. So I'm going to take about 15 minutes to just kind of go through where LIPA is today, what the goals are, what we're doing to achieve those goals, and where we expect to be at the end. So, John, if you can move that along. Most of you have seen this slide. This is our service territory. We have about 1.1 million customers, about a $3.5 billion budget, much infrastructure throughout the island, and we're also connected to 3 of the markets. Next. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the key trends of the Climate Act, which is the kind of foremost bill that was passed this year in the state legislature, and what we're doing on Long Island to address that clean energy economy. So there's 4 real trends that I want to talk about today. One is electricity is going to be we're going to be using clean fuel to decarbonize the economy. The electric load, while we see a declining load right now, when we get into the beneficial electrification, which is the next key trend of electric heating, electric vehicles, we will see a rise in our electric demand, but that will be a beneficial electric demand. And I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm sure Mike Volz will talk a little bit about that when he speaks. And then, obviously, offshore wind is going to be the abundant source, along with solar in the downstate region. Okay, John? So, earlier this year, Governor Cuomo joined with Vice President Al Gore and the state legislature in signing the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. I'll get that at some point in time. Very aggressive, the most aggressive clean energy standards in the country right now. Path to carbon neutrality across sectors, and it sets out extremely aggressive goals in terms of offshore wind, in terms of renewable energy, in terms of energy storage, solar, and basically to get to us 100% carbon-free electric grid by 2040. Long Island, Long Island also has a share of those goals. and we will be working to achieve not only those goals, but more important, probably, we will surpass a number of those goals. If you look at the decarbonization of the various sectors, you'll see transportation and buildings are really the two largest carbon sinks. I use that not as a derogatory term. So when you look at how is the electric grid or electric system going to help decarbonize, we've got to focus on those two sectors, which brings us to electric vehicles and electric heat. So you're going to hear a lot about that, along with the renewable energy, along with energy efficiency, and we all have to do this within a reasonable cost structure. Okay, John? Again, and if you look at what the electric sector has done over the course of time, since 2009, we've actually reduced the carbon output by about 36%. So we have been and will continue to make improvements in terms of our generation capacity and the ability to lower our carbon footprint. As I said, right now we are in a declining load. You've heard about that over the last couple of years. Our load is flat, largely due to renewable energy increases down here and energy efficiency. We have one of the most aggressive energy efficiency programs in the state. That's overseen by Mike and PSEG. We're very proud of that. Okay, we can keep going. Now, really, when you look at the electric grid in New York State, it's really a tale of two states. If you look at the upstate, 87% basically is renewable energy. A lot of hydropower, a lot of large-scale utility, wind, and solar. Downstate, we have about 27%. So that's where the dynamics come in the future. We are going to have about 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind. That's going to predominantly land here. So the challenge is going to be not only interconnecting that offshore wind onto the island, but then moving that power within the island as well as upstate, so to get it to the load pockets. So here is where, when we talk about offshore wind, here are some of the locations and some of the potential projects. You can see Equinor is one of the projects that was approved by New York State in their last RFP, along with the project out here. That's about 1,600 acres, 1,600 megawatts, I'm sorry, 1,700 megawatts of offshore wind. And LIPA also has 130 megawatt, I don't know why I'm into acres today, 130 megawatts of offshore wind contracted for out on the east end as well. Okay. So over the next 20 years, what are we going to be doing? We're going to have to transition our electric grid to a carbon-free. We're going to talk about the clean fuel that obviously does electric vehicles, does electric heat pumps. We're going to be connecting to this 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind, and that can potentially grow over the course of time into our system and then transport it. So what are we doing to get there? We, in the electric business, do a lot of studies, and we are doing a lot of studies right now. We're looking at what are the grid investments that we need to make to accommodate all of this intermittent resources. We're looking at where are the best locations to interconnect the offshore wind. We've got a couple already. We've got one going in here. That's the East End project, and then there will be another project coming in actually into Gowanus, which is in Con Ed's territory. But where are we going to interconnect those other projects? And then we're looking at the existing power plant fleet. Baseload power plants are going to be less important over the course of time. Peaking plants, which can start and stop. So it can start when the wind doesn't blow, it can stop. It can start when the sun doesn't shine, and it can start. So we're doing those studies right now, and those are all to how are we going to integrate this new clean energy economy. Okay, John? So we've started a significant capital investment program. If you look at the investment in our system, we have basically a 325% increase in that investment. You can see how it's been growing since about 2016. Part of that is from the federal government. As a public entity, after Sandy, we were entitled to federal dollars to help us rebuild the system. We've been the beneficiary of about $730 million that fortunately our customers don't have to pay for, but the people in Iowa, Kansas are helping us pay for that. But we are going to continue to invest in the system in the continuing years. Some of the work that's been done as a result of those $730 million is across the island. And it's a number of different things. We're raising substations, we're putting stronger infrastructure, we're putting different types of smarter systems to accept and better utilize the smart meters that'll be going in. We'll all have smart meters in about 3 years. And basically it's strengthening the system in any number of ways throughout the island. Keep going. We're also about $265 million or so just in everyday work. Replacing poles, replacing wires, replacing systems that are going to be newer, going to be more reliable, more resilient. And then obviously economic development is important on Long Island. It's important to us. We do look at ourselves as an economic engine here to help those companies do that. So we've got some big projects coming up. We've got the Hub, we've got Belmont, we've got the Wyandanch Rising, we've got any number of projects throughout the island that we are putting infrastructure in to help facilitate those projects. So what does this all mean, these investments? You know, we're seeing reductions, significant reductions in customers with outages, we used to have a large number of customers actually that had multiple outages over the course of a year. We've seen significant reductions in those. Those were a focal point, our first investments in strengthening the system. Let's go to the areas that are the weakest, and then we'll work backwards. So we've seen significant reduction in that. We've seen reductions in momentaries. And what does that mean? It means it's brought us up to the top 25% of utilities in the country for reliability and resiliency. Extremely proud of that. Go on. Clean energy. Everybody wants to talk about clean energy. We do too. For those of you who know me, this is where I started. This is my passion. This is what I love to do. And we do have our own goals. These are the Long Island goals. We do expect to exceed those in some cases. But in the 2020 budget that we have just proposed and we'll be voting on next month, we're spending about $291 million on clean energy. Spending about $94 million on energy efficiency. And we're spending about $41 million on distributed solar, which is rooftop solar, along with our utility scale projects. So, what have we done so far? We're supposed to be talking about the present. I know I'm kind of shifting off. We've got the 130 megawatt offshore wind farm contracted for with Ørsted out on the East End. We have 3 of the largest utility scale solar projects here on the island, and I believe we're going to have 2 more in the, I think it's next year they're going to be operational. We're ranked 6th in the nation for battery storage. Battery storage is going to be critical in terms of the clean energy economy going forward. And energy efficiency, we do have the most aggressive program in the state for energy efficiency. And that's a credit to Mike Volz and his team who oversee those programs and have continued to be a leader over the course of time. Okay, John? I'm going to skip the electric vehicles program. Mike's going to talk about that. I'm going to skip the smart meters because I think Mike's going to talk about that. The only thing I want to talk about on this slide is we talk about the heat pumps and the electrification of the air conditioning and heating supply. We have a great opportunity here on Long Island. About 40% of our households are oil heat. By replacing or putting in a heat pump, you can reduce your oil consumption while actually reducing your energy costs. As one that has a heat pump now, and have learned how to use it. I do actually save money. It takes me in through about December, January, where I can use the heat pump that keeps my oil burner from very, very limited amount of time to have to kick on. We talked about distributed solar, the rooftop solar program. We do have a goal of about 750 megawatts for Long Island. We are about 69% of that goal already. That's a goal. I think and I've got Peter Gollin sitting in the audience here as one of my trustees, and I know he'd like to see that number go higher as we do as well. So if you'll see the 6,000 megawatt goal, we've got about 69% of that goal. The rest of the state's got 30. If you look at where we're at in terms of the state, it's about 35%. So we're very proud of that. We have about 50,000 rooftop solar installations on the island. That's about, sheer numbers, about 40% of the state's number of solar installations. We just come up with a new program that we just announced as part of the 2020 budget. We're going to basically create a feed-in tariff that would be developing up to 20 megawatts of solar, but the energy that's produced is going to be solely for low and moderate income customers. That is one of the state's goals. Our board has mentioned on a number of occasions, how can we help low and moderate income customers become part of this clean energy movement. This program will actually do that. We're very pleased to have the support of the county executives and a number of other folks who have basically already said this is a great program. What we're really proud about, and I don't have the accountants here, I know how to spend money. I don't know how to save money. That has been my job over the course of time. But we've done all of this by basically keeping our electric bills flat over the last, since 2008 to 2020. What is that? How many years? Thank you. So we basically, if you had an electric bill back in 2008, it was about $155. Today you have a bill about $155. While we've seen significant increases in other services, what I didn't put up here was Newsday's rate of increase, which is actually, I think it's in the triple digits, but we won't go down that road. So we're very pleased about doing all of that work while keeping our budgets flat, and I think this is almost there. And what does this all mean? This means an insignificant increase in customer satisfaction. If you look back before the transition to PSEG as our service provider, we were kind of off the charts in terms of customer service. With all of these investments, with all the work that's been done, with the energy efficiency programs, our clean energy programs, some new rates that Mike's going to talk about, we basically had a significant increase in customer satisfaction over those years, which again, I give tremendous credit to PSEG, Long Island and their team for helping to get us there. One more slide we got. And so here's what we're doing. We're driving towards a clean, carbon-free energy grid. We are trying to do this in a cost-effective manner. Energy efficiency delivered lowest cost. Our program is being delivered at the lowest cost. And we continue to have a customer-focused face. We want to keep the customers happy. These programs, we think, helps us get there. And day-to-day, PSEG is out there ensuring that the customer is first and foremost in their minds. How was that? Did you do it?
Thank you very much, Mike. Terrific. Thank you, Mike. We actually didn't really talk about the relationship between Long Island Power Authority and PSEG Long Island. Just real briefly, that was a great presentation Mike gave about where LIPA is currently, and you see the improvements all across the board in every category. It's a good partnership, right? LIPA and PSEG Long Island, really, we do collaborate, we work together very closely. Generally, LIPA sets the strategy, and we are the implementers. There's some benefits to this model. We're eligible for some federal funding, which Mike mentioned, that otherwise would be our ratepayers paying for that, the liability improvement. So a lot of advantages. Now that we're talking electric, we're going to stay on electric for the time being. I'm going to ask Mike Bolts to come up and talk about what PSEG Long Island has been doing on that side of the house, and I'll find your slide.
Good afternoon, everyone. While he's bringing the slides up, just to add to that description of LIPA versus PSEG. So we have a contract with the Long Island Power Authority for 12 years. We're now in our 6th year of a 12-year contract, and we have an option to renew for another 8 years. So we should be their service provider for a total of 20 years, and maybe it'll even go beyond that. But as long as we continue to do a good job, I think we'll be able to get that 8-year extension after 6 more years and then 8 more years. So very happy to be the service provider for electricity on Long Island. LIPA still owns all the assets. They have tax-exempt bonds. They can finance it. They don't pay federal income tax. They get enough FEMA money for storms. So a lot of benefits to the relationship between PSEG Long Island and LIPA. But we make all the day-to-day operating decisions. All the employees, with the exception of about 50 to 100 LIPA employees, there's 2,500 PSEG Long Island employees. So the folks that are climbing poles and doing the physical labor on Long Island are all PSEG Long Island. So with that, I'm going to jump into, it's right around high noon, so I don't know if I should say good morning or good afternoon. It's noon, but it's good to see everyone here. There was a presentation upstairs about an hour ago on Long Island's energy future. I found it interesting that the future came, and then after that we do the present, but they overlap tremendously, because what I'm going to speak about is the things we're doing today. But what we're doing today is to set us up for the clean energy future. So really there's going to be, for those of you who saw the slides upstairs, there is some overlap, but I think it'll be helpful to just put it in context. So what are we doing today to help our customers save money, use clean energy, use more solar, offshore wind, et cetera? So if you go to the next slide, John. This is just another way to portray the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It basically shows from today down here what we're doing by 2025. We need to have 185 trillion BTUs. These are all statewide goals. So 185 trillion BTUs of energy efficiency savings, 1.5 gigawatts of energy storage, and 6 gigawatts or 6,000 megawatts of solar. And then the key goal, one of the key goals I think is by 2030, 70% of all electricity in New York State will be generated by renewable resources. Right now that number is about 30%. So it's a tremendous lift to get from 30% renewable to 70%. And then on from there. I won't go through all of it, but it's a huge nation-leading Climate Protection Act. Next slide. And this slide, I love to show this one. I know John showed it upstairs too, but in 2010, when I joined, actually I was with LIPA in 2010. I worked for another utility for many years upstate. And then in 2010, I came down to work for LIPA, and then I went to PSEG. But we've basically held the load flat or declining, the peak demand. And in 2013, we were doing a forecast that said by 2030, we would have about 7,000 or 7,500 megawatts of peak demand from all of our customers collectively. But as a result of all those 50,000 solar rooftops and all the LED lighting and all the efficient appliances that our customers are buying from us and the programs, we've been able to keep that demand under around 5,000 megawatts. So really tremendous success. And as Mike Deering mentioned, we do expect it to begin growing in about 10, 15 years from now because of all the increased beneficial electrification. So while we're continuing to help customers use energy more efficiently, as we get more and more electric vehicles and electric heat pumps, we are going to see some growth over time. And it's still going to be good for the environment because, as you saw upstairs, electric heat pumps is about 3 times more efficient and 3 times better for the environment than burning oil or natural gas. Next slide. So just a couple of our past experience. As Mike said, there's 50,000 solar customers on Long Island, about 350 megawatts of total demand, actually production on a peak day. $300 million a year over the past 6 years or so on energy efficiency. And then every year we save 1.5% of the energy sales. So had we not been implementing our efficiency programs, because of all the new buildings, I was driving down Jericho Turnpike, tremendous number of new housing developments around the train stations and other areas of commercial development, we would have been growing by about 1 to 1.25% or so. But because of the efficiency, we've taken the new growth from new buildings and actually reduced demand. Offshore wind, we had signed a contract, actually, LIPA, we worked on behalf of LIPA, but there's a contract with the Long Island Power Authority for 130 megawatts, which will be built in the next 2 or 3 years out off the coast of Montauk. And then NYSERDA has selected an additional 1,000, it's almost 1,700 megawatts that'll be coming online a little bit later. And then with regard to energy storage, as Mike Deering mentioned, we were 6th in the country, the SEPA award, the last one in 2018, top 10, actually number 6 in the entire nation. And battery storage is important because as you get more and more intermittent resources like wind and solar that aren't always on, you need to be able to store the energy to be able to release it when you need it most. Next. So a heat pump. We heard a lot about heat pumps, and I have an electric heat pump in my home, I'm very familiar with it. But the basic idea is, if you think about your refrigerator and it's cold inside and it blows hot air out the bottom or out the back, that's all it's doing. It's taking the outdoor air. I went to a program for Daikin down in, I think it was down in the Seaford area. They built a new showroom, and it was amazing. They had this box with clear, you were there with me, right, John? They had this clear box, and we put a thermometer on the box, and it was 22 degrees inside the box, and it was 101 degrees being blown out. So it just demonstrated that you can get, when the air is 22 degrees outside, you can still extract 101 degree air out of it because of the compression cycle and the refrigerant and the way it works. So it's amazing. But you can take the, in the summertime, you're taking the heat out of your home and rejecting it outside, and you're cooling your home down to a comfortable 70 degrees. And in the wintertime, even if it's 22 degrees outside, you can extract heat and blow that 100 degree air into your home. And it's about 3 times more efficient. For every BTU of energy that you put into the electric compressor, every BTU of energy in creates 3 BTUs of energy that you can move. So you're getting essentially a 300% efficient appliance. For every 1 unit of energy in, you get 3 units out. So you're putting 1 BTU into your condenser, and then 3 BTUs of heat in your house. So very efficient technology, and I'm going to go into the next slide actually. These are some of the rebates that are available. It's still being finalized for January of 2020, our new incentives. They're available now, but we're still making sure that we get all the bugs out, if you will, of a new, very generous rebate. And basically, we're going to encourage homeowners and businesses to install electric heat pumps, and we're offering up to $1,000 a ton. A typical home uses about 3 to 4 tons of heating and cooling capacity. So at $1,000 a ton, you can get a $3,000 or $4,000 rebate. But the idea of it is, that's for a whole house solution. So what we don't want to have someone do is put a heat pump in and only use it in the summertime and shut it off all winter long, and then use their oil heat in the wintertime. So as part of this program, we're requiring what we call a whole house solution, which means it needs a smart thermostat along with the new heat pump. We want to make sure that the homeowner or business installs a thermostat that will tie together the heating of the heat pump with, if there's an existing backup system and it remains, we want to make sure that you'll optimize the use of heating from electricity, which is generally less expensive, and then only use the backup fuel when totally necessary. But in general, if the ducted air source heat pump, $1,000 a ton. If you're using oil right now, it's $800 a ton. And then if you have natural gas or other fuels, it's $600 a ton. Same for the ductless mini splits, which are the smaller units, generally mounted up on the wall. Same dollars per ton. But again, if it's a whole house or a whole zone, if you have an entire floor of a home and you put ductless mini splits and you're heating that space with electricity, then you're eligible for these higher rebates. If you're just using it as an air conditioner in the summer, we have rebates available for that as well, but they're much lower if it's not having the integrated controls for the whole house solution. Next slide. So Mike mentioned electric vehicles, and the 2 ways when you use the term beneficial electrification, the 2 technologies that are most able to efficiently use electricity to displace fossil fuels is electric vehicles to replace gasoline and electric heat pumps to replace oil or propane or in some cases natural gas. So those are generally the most cost effective and the best overall for society. So I mentioned heat pumps, and now I want to talk a little bit about electric vehicles. The beauty of both of these technologies is that as an electric utility, and this is true not just on Long Island, but elsewhere in New York State and in the Northeast, we generally peak on a hot summer afternoon. So the demand for electricity on a hot summer afternoon is about 5,000 megawatts, as I showed in the earlier slide. On a day like today, it's about 2,500 megawatts. So we're only using half the capacity, in the winter months that the system is built for. So all the wires and transformers and substations and even the power plants, they have the capacity to produce twice the amount of energy as we're using today in the wintertime. So the beauty of heat pumps is you can use all that spare capacity in the winter months to provide electricity at a very efficiently, low cost, and we have spare capacity. Electric vehicles, similarly, while it's not necessarily summer versus winter, it's nighttime versus daytime. That same analogy, on a hot summer afternoon, 5,000 megawatts. At 2 o'clock in the morning, maybe it's only 3,000 or 4,000 megawatts, even in the summertime, because at nighttime, people turn all the lights off, the televisions go off, and the air conditioning isn't needed quite as much in the middle of the night. So electric vehicles can fill the valley by selling electricity off peak. And as Mike Terry mentioned, we're going to have rate designs. We have them right now, but we're enhancing our rate designs so that if you drive an electric vehicle and you charge it at night, you'll get a discount. As it is, even with our full service retail costs, it costs about 5.5 cents a mile to drive an electric vehicle. And a gasoline vehicle, depending on the make and model and the mileage you get, it's about 11 cents a mile. So even with our existing rates, it's about half the cost to put fuel in an electric vehicle versus a gasoline vehicle. With our discount off-peak rates, that 5.5 cents gets down even lower, about 4 cents per mile driven. So we have incentives for smart chargers. And the reason for the smart chargers, New York State has an incentive to purchase the vehicle itself. So if you go out and buy a Tesla or a Chevy Bolt or all-electric vehicle, I think it's up to $2,000 that you can get back from New York State for buying the vehicle. What we focus our energy and our attention on is not so much purchasing the vehicle, although we'd be happy if you purchase vehicles, but we'd prefer that consumers charge that vehicle in the middle of the night as opposed to on a hot summer afternoon. So our incentives are to get a smart charger. The smart charger, it's a 240 volt level 2 charger. If you put it in your garage or at a business even, the businesses is even more generous than 500, but for homeowners, if you put that charger in, and you can set the charger to come on at midnight and go off at 6 a.m., for example, and then you can take advantage of the discounted electric rates that I mentioned and charge at night. So we're offering incentives. The chargers cost about $500, so it covers almost the entire cost, but then you presumably would need an electrician to come in and wire it, which is, depending on where it is in your home, another $400 or $500 of labor and wiring to wire it up. But it's a generous incentive, and we would encourage anyone who is interested in an electric vehicle to work with PSEG Long Island. We'll get you the incentive for that. And then for, just back to that one, you don't need to show it, but I wanted to mention on businesses, if you have a hotel or a restaurant, you want to put electric vehicles for the public to use, and it's a commercial business, or for your workplace, for your employees. If your employees want to charge, I know Farmingdale College has done that for their employees, then you can get $4,000 for each electric charging port. These ports tend to be a little larger, a little more expensive to install. So it's either $500 for the home or $4,000 if you put it at a workplace. And then the last slide I have, I wanted to mention AMI stands for Automated Metering Infrastructure. So the electric utility industry has been around about 100 years. And the meters have a little dial and it spins, and that technology is 100 years old. A little magnetic field causes the dial to go around. You've all seen them. And you can see how much you're using by how fast the dial is spinning. Today's technology is all digital. And backing up to the dial, we had to drive around in a car. Meter readers had to go up. And when I first joined the utility, I actually had a pen and paper and they had to write the meter. Now they read them electronically. But we still need meter readers to go out to your home. Maybe the meter's in the backyard. Maybe you have a big dangerous dog and we have to somehow climb over the fence. It's not the best way to get information about how much energy you used in the 21st century. AMI meters, it's all automated. We have collectors on the poles, we have routers, and all we do, and actually right now on Long Island, 400,000 of these meters have been installed. So 40% of all houses on Long Island, and this chart just shows you, we started in the Rockaways, and we started on Montauk Point, and we're working our way in. So the idea is that by 2021 or 22, about 2 more years, we should have the entire island with automated metering infrastructure. It's a much more efficient way to read meters and collect data. It's safer for our employees. We don't have to be driving around. We don't have to be going into dangerous situations. And for you as a business or a homeowner, it also gives you great information. because we have something called My Account, where you can pay your electric bill online. It's our website. You can see your usage if you're interested. I'm not sure who wants to see it every 15 minutes, but you could say at 3 o'clock in the morning, why was my power going up last night? Or last Saturday when I had, a party at my house, my consumption goes up. But it is actually very beneficial to see your hourly. I look at it hourly, I don't look at it every 15 minutes. But hour by hour, if you see what your usage is, it can help educate you as to how to save energy. Because if you see that there was a big jump in your energy consumption, you might say, oh, we turned on the swimming pool pump, or we turned the air conditioner on. And by using that information to see how and when you use energy, it really helps you to save energy. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the next speaker.
Very good. Thanks very much, Mike. And we're going to stay with energy utilities for now, but we're going to the natural gas side of the house with Keith Rooney.
Thank you. I cut my slides in half, actually less than half, because I know it's getting close to lunchtime. So I will be brief. I want to leave some time at the end for questions and answers. It's always hard when you got to get up on a panel and you follow a guy named Mike Volz who works for an electric company. I mean, that's like really cool. It just made me think, when I started in the business 30 years ago, I was actually in the local 101 union. I worked in the street department in Brooklyn, in Canarsie. And I had a boss named Greg Roach. And when we didn't even have email back then, but when we did get on the email, he used to send emails, gregroach@bug.com. And I used to laugh every time when I got an email from him. But Mike, you got a really cool name. I just had to get that out there. But the other thing, when I started in the company also, a lot of the foremen, they would give the guys in the union rolls of quarters, so that if we had a problem in the field, we could get to a payphone. And I was just thinking, just looking around here, seeing how many people have these things now. Can you imagine, especially my millennials here, can you imagine walking around without this thing, where you actually had to go to a payphone? Well, energy is no different. 30 years ago, we've made major progress in the energy sector, but we have a long way to go, and I'm gonna talk about that today. So just who we are real quick, this is a snapshot of Long Island. Downstate, we have 1.8 million customers total, but on Long Island, we have over 600,000. We also have 8 steam units and 42 turbine diesel units that are all contracted under LIPA. And some of the things we're working on is customer bills, investing in the infrastructure, working with our stakeholders on a long-term supply option, which I'll get into in a little bit. So recently I went to an off-site with our CEO. He used the analogy like Blockbuster. He said, Blockbuster sat back on their laurels and now they're out of business. And he basically told all the directors and vice presidents, if we don't make the transition now, we will be out of business. So we're trying to make repurpose ourselves to a clean energy company and get away from fossil fuels and drive all of our clean renewables. And we're doing a lot of stuff in that space. This is some of the stuff that we're doing in the clean energy. So solar, we invested $100 million in a company called Sunrun. And for the first time, we actually converted more solar customers than gas customers in the history of the company. So that's just on the solar front. We also acquired a company called Geronimo Energy, which is out in Minneapolis. And this was also a $100 million plus investment to the biggest developer of wind and solar. And they're working in our upstate region and working on solar and wind farms. And it's really exciting stuff for the first time. And then for the renewable gas plant, if anybody's ever gone on the Kosciuszko Bridge, you see those big eggs on the right-hand side? That actually takes human waste and repowers it to power 25 homes. So just imagine that, human waste that was just going into a sewer, that treatment plant will now convert that into clean natural gas and put it out. It's gonna go live at the end of this month. This is a partnership that we had with New York City, and this is a really cool project. And then I just wanted to hit the electric and, just go back. The electric vehicles. We've added 165 charging stations and 5 megawatts of battery storage. And also, besides that, we're offering our employees $5,000, a check for $5,000 if they buy an electric vehicle, and 400 plus have already taken advantage of this in the last 8 months. Another sign of that commitment to clean energy. This is some of the other stuff we're working with the state officials on the green gas tariff, power to gas, hydrogen blending, and reducing methane to like 60% by 2035, which is pretty aggressive. And then I'm going to get into this in a little bit on the next slide. So this is an overview of our transmission system. If you see, everything here is in red, is our 350-pound system. So if you can imagine there's 30 pounds in a car tire, this is a 350-pound network that connects National Grid Brooklyn, Con Edison, and the old legacy Lilco Long Island company, which is now Natural Grid Long Island. These these little blue boxes you see, those are all transfer metering points. Basically means that we're all physically connected into one network, and that network feeds 1.8 million customers and 30 plus power generators. The Northeast Supply Enhancement, which I'm going to get into the agreement next, but basically the proposal was to bring a looping pipe into this existing pipe. This was approved by President Barack Obama in 2014. This comes all the way up into Floyd Bennett Field, feeds into the distribution system, and then is fed out all the way out to Long Island. The intent was to bring another 400 million decatherms into this line to go back into the transmission system. So I want to talk about the agreement with the state. Last week, we lifted the moratorium, and we have an agreement with the New York State Public Service Commission, and that's a 2-year proposal. So we are connecting our customers now underway. We had over 35,000 units of people waiting for gas, and that number continues to climb on a daily basis. There's 3 pieces of this. First, I'm going to talk about the $36 million investment. The $36 million investment, 20 million of that goes all to clean, renewable energy, all of our green technology, all of our renewables, stuff like geothermal, heat pumps. We're gonna give this money back to the state to drive these initiatives. That's 20 million of it. 8 million of it is energy efficiency. We're also gonna do $7 million for customer assistance. For those customers that were affected as a result of this moratorium, we're gonna give aid to help people recuperate them. And then the other piece of that is, there's one little piece left for you mathematicians, and that's to hire a auditor that makes sure that all these agreements are carried out and followed through. We have one more thing. We have a short-term solution and a long-term solution. The short-term solution is we very aggressively work with our demand response program. We strategically went out on the system, especially on Long Island, and we incentivized some of our biggest commercial customers to get off gas during the top 15 coldest days of the year. So we're going to actually give them money to get off during the load periods, which is like 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., and then again from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And this really was an aggressive move on the customer teams to do this, and also working with energy efficiency. And the last part of that is compressed natural gas trucks. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but we have 2 facilities on Long Island. I'm not going to disclose them, but they're old gas plants. They're safe, they're secure, they're operated by union operators, they're fenced in, they have security, and we're going to be increasing those trucks this winter significantly just to get through the winter operation, and then next winter it's probably going to double, and we might even add 2 more sites. That's the short-term issue. The long-term issue is we're going to be negotiating with the Public Service Commission on a long-term agreement which has a plethora of clean energy, renewable stuff, but it also has the pipeline as well as part of that agreement. So what we're going to have is public hearings. We're going to be meeting with local electeds, stakeholders, and by the way, we've had over 3,000 meetings in the last 3 years on this, so it's been a pretty tough go. But that being said, we're going to take input from our customers and stakeholders, take all of these ideas that are given, and then we're going to lay it out, and we're going to lay it out with the state and say, this is the short-term solution, this is the long-term solution, and we will have an agreement by June of 2020 that would carry forward into winter of 2021. Now that's a plethora of different things involved in this, so that's where we're at today. That's my story. I'll be glad to ask any questions or get beat up afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. Very good. Thank you, Keith. I think we're all happy to see that the short-term agreement is done, and that we're looking forward to the second phase. Changing gears a little bit now, we're going to bring up David Sheeran from Empower Solar, who's going to talk to us all about renewable power. And I know Mike Phelps talked about something like 30,000 homes in Long Island already with solar on the roof. I think David was probably a good part of that. So, David, here you go.
Thanks so much, John. Hello, everyone. Slightly different flavor for me. So, Empower Solar is a company I founded in 2003. We have about 100 employees in Nassau County, based in Allen Park. We do residential and commercial solar in the New York metro area, also upstate. So, downstate it's mostly residential and commercial on rooftop, some ground mount, which I'll show you. Upstate, it's mostly ground mount on large properties. So we do operate in about 3 or 4 different utility territories. Of course, Long Island Power Authority / PSEG Long Island, Con Edison, and then National Grid's electric utility in the capital region, and NYSEG and a few others around state. So I started doing this, and many of us in this room believe in the vision of clean energy that will deliver many profound societal benefits. I know Mike explained that that's what has been driving him and many of his colleagues for years, Mike Boltz and others. I think most of the population, when polled, believes that clean energy is a clear national security, economic security, and climate security imperative. Next slide, please. Just to show you a few of our projects, one of our, you can go next slide. We built this system for Estee Lauder in Melville, 2011. And what was neat about that system is that building on their 5-building property in Melville is an automated storage facility. So they manufacture beauty products at an adjacent building, and then they convey it over to this automated storage facility. It looks something out of Star Wars. So there are no humans in this building, but it uses a lot of electricity. The solar we put on that in 2011 has consistently netted out 0 electric consumption since then. Next slide, please. But we got to then add this ground mount system, which we just completed, maybe last month, to offset the rest of their building's loads. So they're using that property, which is right in Melville. It's Corporate Drive. You can drive past it and see it. It's really a wonderful project. Next slide, please. Another ground mount system. I happen to be showing you ground mount systems we did on Long Island. It's unique and very challenging to get it done in this territory. That's in Brentwood. So with the Sisters of St. Joseph. And what's really cool about that is we have a community solar program there where that's injecting power into the grid in one spot, and the utility through their community solar program are crediting all the different accounts that they have on their campus. Next slide, please. Just briefly, for commercial and industry customers, there are really 2 ways to go solar in this territory. One is you can put the system to reduce your own bills, okay? You can do that with solar, you can add battery to it, and that is common. Next slide, please. The second way is through community solar, and we've talked about that a little bit here today, but in essence, community solar enables you to put solar on a building and sell that energy off-site to subscribers, residential and commercial. Now, what's unique and really important about community solar is that it enables a building owner that may not be paying the electric bills in that building to host the system and monetize their roof. A lot of the building stock in this territory is, of course, in many territories, owned by property developers. So this is a key mechanism for us to accelerate solar deployment on Long Island. So this is one of our recent residential installations. We've probably done about 3,500 so far in the territory. And what I can tell you, residential solar, it gets more exciting by the day because we can do more and more for our customers. If you go to the next slide. Because with the solar, we're pairing these Tesla Powerwall systems. And I had just completed my pilgrimage to Tesla's Gigafactory in Nevada. And I wanted to show you, this is just one battery cell that they include. And these Powerwall units that are paired with homes, there are about, say, 900 or 1,000 of these batteries in there. And in the Tesla, let's say Model 3 or Model S, you have about 9,000 of these. So the factory, this Gigafactory in Nevada, is quite amazing because on one side of the factory, you have Panasonic who's manufacturing these batteries by the millions. Then they pass them over to the next side of the factory, and then they assemble them into these different battery compartment units. Really cool. So I'm going to talk a little about policy now. And let's just get into it. So you've heard, and you may be familiar with this discussion of the CLCPA, Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. What does it say? Well, it sets a statewide goal for 70% renewable electric by 2030, 100% renewable electric by 2040, and then 100% carbon neutral by 2050. That includes transportation and heating and a lot of other things. So as has been implied, we should anticipate our electric load to dramatically increase from where it is today. If you take that big chart that Mike had before about where you break down the emissions, transportation is a big part of it. Guess what? We have to shift that to the electric sector. So that means we even have to go further and think in a different way about how do we clean the electric sector. Hold on one second, if you don't mind, John. So I just wanted to share, I've been parsing through all the LIPA documents with my colleagues to really make sure that everyone has the clear information. And what's important about the state goal is that in the law, it's a law now, right? The law states this is a statewide goal. It doesn't necessarily say what each territory, utility territory, it doesn't differentiate. What it does do is it establishes a council, and that's in progress right now. A council that's going to be comprised of state officials and some private sector officials appointed by our state government to decide how does it actually manifest. What are the compliance requirements? What are the different requirements of the different territories? These things have not been defined yet. But what we're proposing is a fundamental shift from the current thinking on Long Island. The current plan, as is, if you look at the integrated resource plan that LIPA has, and even what's been stated, is we're on track to hit about 10% renewable energy by 2030 in Long Island territory. And wind is very exciting. But even if you look at the plans that LIPA recently launched, it's going to be roughly a gigawatt or gig and a half of that wind capacity dedicated to Long Island by 2035. That's the estimate today. Next slide, please. So the integrated resource plan that LIPA released, I think does every 5 years. In 2017, they showed renewables were 5% of the electric mix. Okay? So I'm just showing you that our total load was 20,964 gigawatt hours in 2016. And I think the load growth has been roughly constant. You read that? Flat. So it's roughly that. Renewables might have ticked up a little bit. The wind plan, which I just mentioned, 1 gigawatt by 2035, that's maybe 10% of 2016 consumption. But we just talked about how we have to add the transportation sector. Whoa. Eye-opener. So, new strategic plan that I know Mike and Tom Falcone are going to study very seriously when we submit it to them, and Peter and the board. We are orders of magnitude off. We need to change our paradigm completely. We need to think about getting 10 gigawatts extra solar in our territory over the next 10 years. Okay? Profound benefits, benefits that we can't even understand. Much lower cost of energy over time. Clean air. Can you imagine clean air and what that will do for our society? One of my favorite clients, he runs the neonatal intensive care unit at Winthrop, now Mount Sinai. He has done studies on the correlation between our air pollution and prematurity. Direct link. Next slide, please. So here's where we are today in 2020, expected our solar growth versus where the goal is. If you look at solar growth on the current trend, we're adding today roughly 50 to 70 megawatts per year. Not bad, not great. It's actually a slowdown from where we were. LIPA did a lot of things over the years to promote solar, and it's slowing down. Can you go back one slide, please? I just want to show this yawning gap of our current trend and where we need to be. It's a huge gap. Huge. Next slide, please. And let me just put a fine point on this for you, okay? Here's our interconnection map. Substations across Long Island that you can currently pull up on the PSEG Long Island website. red is bad. That means closed for business. There's a lot of red. Today, and I'll give you a very specific point. Empower Solar was awarded the contract to build a system at Riverhead Landfill. We put in an application to interconnect. We just got a response that said to interconnect at that substation will cost us $4.8 million for a 5 megawatt system. Out here in Riverhead, red. Now, for a reference, we looked at the data set in National Grid electric territory by the capital region, where we're doing these same size projects. The average cost is well under $1 million to connect that system, same size system. Now, I must acknowledge that recently, LIPA and PSEG have agreed to establish an interconnection working group with the industry, which we asked them to do, and they have been. And these are the types of challenges and strategic thinking that we need to do to turn it from red to green, from red to green. Now, Mike Deering mentioned the capital budget. This is the type of thing, the capital budget. We must look at this massive budget and rethink our grid to enable distributed generation, the most important thing we could possibly compel in our territory right now. Paradigm changing. That's what we need to be thinking about. Next slide, please. I just, would be remiss not to acknowledge the massive challenges our utilities have. All this is falling on their shoulders. Suddenly, they're the epicenter of fixing our climate problem, right? That's not easy. In truth, they're doing a wonderful job, but managing of the utility of yesterday, right? Because we have high rates in the region, they're controlling that. We have bad customer service, they're controlling that. We need a new strategic imperative to dramatically increase renewable energy. That's the challenge. And I want to just leave you with this final point, which is that the key reason, to do this is not just because it's a law, not just because it's a climate imperative, but because solar and battery are going to deliver the cheapest energy at any source. It's electronics. We just said the phone. The phone is an example. Solar power is the phone. It's electronics. The real cost of the stuff is going to go down over time versus electric utility costs historically have increased substantially over the years. And there's one direction for electric utility costs. There's another direction, which is this, for solar costs. And this is the value we can deliver to Long Island stakeholders. It's time for action. We have a lot of work to do. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Let's put a hand for all of our panelists. Thanks to all. Very informative discussion. We're probably holding you guys up for lunch, but I would like to take a couple of questions. Yes, Peter?
Yeah, a question for Mr. Keating. We've heard about 1% per year energy efficiency in the electric grid. I know for a fact by reading your filings with the Public Service Commission that your goal for this year is 1/10 of 1% gas efficiency. Had you implemented a reasonable efficiency plan a decade or so, the way other utilities around the country, other gas utilities have done, you probably wouldn't need that Transco pipeline or the Nessie pipeline. In any case, gas is a fossil fuel, which will have to disappear from this area within a few decades. So what is your business plan?
So first of all, I would say you're incorrect about not needing a pipeline. So I actually was the chief operator for the state, and I'll tell you that on a cold day, we put almost 3 billion cubic feet of gas through the system. We have power plants that burn more gas than the state of Vermont. So if you think that you're just going to say, well, natural gas is going away, it's not. It's without getting into politics, it's a big piece of the clean energy puzzle, and it is the cleanest fossil fuel, and it's not going anywhere. So this pipeline is needed, and it will be and natural gas will be here 10 years and 20 years beyond. We could do listen, are we perfect? No. But, maybe they should have been more aggressive 10 years ago, but I can tell you right now, some of the stuff is confidential, but I have seen some of the stuff that's going into the next rate case, and we are spending millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on clean energy in every aspect of the business. But natural gas, I'll tell you, is not going anywhere. You can't just shut the gate station. Listen, I invite you to, if you want to come to Melville, I'll give you a tour of the control center, and you can see the enormity of the system and how big it is, and that it runs 24/7. When you go to sleep, energy does not go to sleep. It's constant. Almost 3 billion cubic feet of gas. Think about that. That's more than the rest of the company combined, just downstate. So, I'll argue with anybody on that one. I mean, I actually invite you to come to Melville, and I'll give you a personal tour and go over our initiatives.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Matthew Barisic. I'm the president of Building Trades. On slide 5, you said that battery electric storage is actually the focus of the future. And one of the things I have to say here is it is a backup and also supplemental power source, and I agree with that. And then on section 17, you have one about the idea of where we were in all the power sources. The question I have is hydrogen gas a focus of a dual-purpose energy source for both fuel and storage? That's really what it is. It's the storage component, because it's probably going to be cheaper than battery storage. Because what happens when you have the lithium batteries 10, 15 years from now? That's your next environmental concern.
Suppose hydrogen, I think our experts have any awareness of hydrogen storage. That's one we haven't really dealt with a lot.
Well, I mean, I think, Matty, I think technology is going to catch up, right? So as we continue to move forward in terms of renewable and clean energy goals, you're going to see more focus on hydrogen, you see more focus on solar, you see more focus on wind. You're going to see technologies that we may not even know about today start to come into play. So that's why I think you look at the evolution of things, and just as solar years ago was $13 a watt, today it's whatever, it's significant, it's cents per watt. Wind has already come down through the regional marketplace. Hydrogen could be the same place. I think it's in a very early stage, as far as I know, and I'm not the engineer in the room, but it's in the early stages, but that could be a technology that quickly comes to pass.
And then there's a second piece too, is also, can you please explain VETR, whether it be you or you, to the people out here?
I'll try to explain VETR, and maybe we may have others weigh in. But yeah, VETR stands for the value of distributed energy resources, and it's a tariff that LIPA has that pays solar developers for the value of the solar energy that they produce. And there's 4 components. There's the capacity value, which is on a hot summer day, what's the value of capacity in the market? So for being able to deliver capacity, there's an energy price, which is based on how many kilowatt hours it produces and what time of day it produces. So there's a capacity energy. Then there's a distribution value, because by having solar out on the distribution system, it reduces the stress on the grid. So that's the third component, will be a distribution value. And the fourth one is an environmental attribute, because it doesn't have any carbon emissions. And when you add all 4 of those together, you get a price. But the price changes every hour. So it's not, one number. It's, a hot summer day, it's worth more than it is in the middle of the night or the winter, et cetera, et cetera. So VETR is a tariff, but it makes it somewhat difficult for solar developers, because the price is not predictable as much as, say, the feed-in tariff. So the new community solar feed-in tariff that we're working on will take all those variables away and just fix the price. So it'll probably make it better. I don't know if I want to add any more to that.
The only thing I'd add is that the methodology for calculating the value stack was set through a very extensive state proceeding, and it's already been subject to several revisions which have been improved. However, we do have regional disagreements about the valuation of the different attributes. And right now there's a major disagreement between industry and LIPA about the value of, the future value of community solar, and a specific component called the community credit. Because unfortunately, Gen 1, there's going to be a reduction to it that we think is unviable, so that's a problem. But we'll tell you there's one major positive about VETR that, and I think it's true throughout the state, it does provide a model for us to get going with solar plus battery projects, because what we can do, and this is what we're doing in a lot of projects now, we're doing a direct injection only solar plus battery through the VETR. We're not connected, it's in front of the meter. And so there's this methodology to receive income for injecting. And batteries, you mentioned this in your earlier comment, right now batteries are especially good lithium. at a 4-hour injection. 4 hours. And that happens to be coincident with a peaking time for the grid. And so they're telling us, they're signaling to us when to do that. So there is a very smart rationale behind ITER. It just needs some tweaking.
Maybe one more quick question, hold everybody up for lunch, but Larry will make it
All
real
right,
quick.
just this quick, and this is for you, Keith, and I appreciate you guys. Great presentation, everybody. I'm the business agent, Mara Matera, business agent with Plumbers Local 200, not just because plumbing protects the health of the nation, but this gas situation, I feel that whether it's 10 years is a 10-year window before technology really gets to the point where renewables are going to be real strong and like that. But this 10-year window, in my eyes, I'm very, very concerned. We have close to 5,000 applicants that I feel that's Nassau and Suffolk County that would turn down. Keith, does this mean that, in other words, these applicants are we're going to be getting gas for these? Because I know the truck's going to be coming in. I know the pipeline, well, I'm hoping that, in other words, that pipeline was for a 10-year period of time, what I heard of the NSC. And then obviously that would give chances for renewables, I feel, that 10-year window. We need this pipeline, I feel, for this 10 years of us moving forward with all the projects that we have online. We have, it took 4 to 6 years to get these projects to go forward, and right now they're on hold. But not just with the building trades and everything, sitting there at a nursing home, at a press conference, to sit there and say we can't get gas for a kitchen for assisted living is a sin today that we're in the 21st century. My question is, 5,000 applicants, are we going to be able to get gas for these 5,000 applicants right now?
The answer is yes, and it's going to be a challenge. I'm going to be honest with you, as somebody who operated the system for over 25 years, without getting into politics, we are very tight, and it's not made up. When you're bringing 40 trucks in and out with their operations, that's not made up. All the years I operated, we never did that. The other part of this is, to your point, I have an office in Brooklyn and one on Long Island, and the days I'm in Brooklyn, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Brooklyn, it is blowing up. Downtown Brooklyn, I have 55 customers downtown that these are buildings with 9,000 tenants in them. And we're trying to push the renewables. We're going to the developers and say they're pushing back. They all want gas. And you know what? To Peter's comment before, if we do this right, and we, shame on us, we should have done more, but we're doing it now. And if we do this right, 20 years, that transmission system that I showed you before, that might be moving hydropower. Like I talked about those quarters in my pocket. That might be the future. Natural gas consumption might go down, but it's not going down anytime soon, and people want it. And to answer your question, Mario, we're going to methodically hook up every customer, but keep in mind we are taking a big risk, and I'm telling you, a very big risk next winter. But we're going to try to do everything we can to mitigate that, because we made a commitment to the 1.8 million customers we serve. That's what's really disheartening to me as a former operator. But on the customer hat, I get the calls every day from mom and pop, Joe to Cop and Breezy Point. These people are so happy that they're getting gas, and my team is out here. These people, you know what it's like to be in the customer service world and tell people no. And there's a lot of empathy. It's a lot of sleepless nights. And now to say yes, it feels fantastic. But the guy sitting behind you, he runs the control center for the state. He's going to be as gray as me next winter.
That's not so bad.
All right, I think we have one last quick question, and then we're going to wrap it up, okay? Neil?
This workshop was Energy Now. There was a workshop earlier, Energy Future. So I just wanted to sort of play on that now-future question. I was looking at a recently approved modern new medical facility, multi-million dollars. They have their roof on the website. You can see there's not a stitch of solar on the building. It was built to code, which means it's the most inefficient building they can get for the building. So we have a lot of people at this conference that are building new buildings. Do we agree, panel, that in the year 2020, we should still be building buildings that don't have any solar, that are not highly energy efficient, that are not doing any of the things we're talking about? Here, now, today, could we say, and I should point out that Molloy College Sustainability Institute put out a white paper saying that all new commercial construction should include a percentage of solar on the roof. And I was just wondering if where we are at now, why why is it still acceptable that we're still building buildings the way we could have built them 10 or 20 years ago?
I'll take a crack from the gas side, real quick, and then I'll hand it off.
From the gas side, great point, Neil, and I think that policy is gonna dictate that. So I actually commend the governor and I commend the PSC, because we're working together with them, and those policies that those public, state officials mandate, that's how you do it. You force people to say, you're doing a building of this size, you're not just gonna do gas, you're gonna do X, Y, and Z, not just to do sole purpose. But I will tell you, a lot of developers that I deal with, they push back due to cost, and they push back because heat pumps are great, but I think Mike mentioned it, in the middle of January, when it's the 5 coldest days of the year, there are some issues with that, and then you go start using electric heaters, which takes away your environmental benefit.
Has to be put in
Yeah,
law.
so I agree, we should certainly encourage greater, new construction particularly, because once a building's built, you're there for 20, 30 years before you have to replace the heating system or the cooling system. So stronger codes and enforcement of codes is very important, more insulation, heating systems. I would stop short of mandating, full solar on every roof.